Imagine you're standing in your kitchen at 7 p.m. The air is thick with the tension you could cut with a steak knife. You just found out your partner, or maybe your best friend, forgot something huge. Something they promised they'd handle weeks ago. Your heart is doing that weird, heavy thud against your ribs. You aren't even looking for a grand gesture or a bouquet of roses. You just want three syllables. I am sorry. But as you look at them, you see their jaw tighten. Their eyes shift from the floor to the wall, then finally to you. And instead of an apology, they say, well, if you hadn't nagged me about it so much, I probably would have remembered. The room goes cold. It feels like a physical slap to the chest. In that moment, you realize you aren't just dealing with a mistake. You are dealing with a psychological fortress. You think the problem is that they're stubborn or just a bit of a jerk. But the truth is, much deeper and much more unsettling. Stick around because we're going to look inside the brain of the person who never says sorry. I'm going to show you why their brain is literally wired to protect a lie. And by the end of this, you'll know exactly how to handle them without losing your mind. For a long time, I used to think these people were just alpha types. I thought they were so confident that they didn't feel the need to admit fault. I felt small around them, wondering why I was the only one constantly apologizing for breathing. I thought maybe I was the broken one for having a conscience. The internet will tell you these people are all narcissists. That's the common sense diagnosis you'll find in every comment section. Dump them. They're a narcissist. The keyboard warriors scream, but that advice is actually dangerous because it's a massive oversimplification. If you treat everyone who can't apologize like a movie villain, you miss the actual mechanics. You end up fighting a war you can't win because you're using the wrong map. Psychologists actually have a much more specific term for this. They call it fragile high self-esteem. It sounds like a contradiction, right? How can someone be highly confident and fragile at the same time? But here's the uncomfortable truth nobody talks about. A person who can't apologize isn't actually strong. They are living in a state of constant psychological identity threat. To them, an apology isn't a bridge back to you. It's a wrecking ball aimed at the only version of themselves they can live with. To understand this, we have to look at the first way they destroy your value. It comes down to a glitch I call the identity fortress. Imagine a guy named Dave. Dave is a manager at a mid-sized firm, and he's generally a good guy. One day, Dave accidentally gives his team the wrong deadline for a massive project. The team stays up all night, works their fingers to the bone, and then finds out it was all for nothing. When the lead designer, Sarah, politely points out the mistake, Dave freezes. Now, a healthy person would say, "Oh man, I totally botched that. I'm so sorry, guys." Instead, he starts talking about how the project brief was ambiguous from the start. He mentions that Sarah should have double-checked the calendar herself. He spends 45 minutes explaining why. Technically, he wasn't wrong. The energy in the room dies a slow, painful death. Sarah leaves feeling like she's crazy, and Dave feels like he won the argument. But Dave didn't win anything. He just locked himself deeper in his castle. Dave has a core belief: I am a competent, good person. If Dave admits he made a mistake, his brain tells him, I am a failure and a bad person. His ego is so rigid it cannot handle a single crack in the armor. For Dave, apologizing isn't about the deadline. It's about his entire existence as a good person. If he admits one fault, the whole castle crumbles. So he chooses the castle over the truth every single time. Now, how do you actually handle a Dave in your life? The mistake most people make is trying to force the apology. You keep pointing at the mistake, hoping they'll finally see the light. But Dave, you sent the email. Look at the timestamp. This just makes them dig their heels in harder. They feel hunted, so they become more dangerous. Instead, you have to use a technique called the value pivot. Instead of demanding a sorry, you focus entirely on the future solution. You say, I see that the deadline was confusing. Let's set a system so we're both on the same page next time. Notice what you didn't do. You didn't demand they admit they were wrong. By doing this, you bypass their identity threat entirely. The other person feels their ego is safe, so their defenses drop. It's frustrating because you want the justice of an apology, but here's where everyone makes a massive mistake. You value the truth of what happened more than the peace of what's next. If you want to survive these people, you have to decide if you want to be right or if you want to be sane. I'll explain how to handle the silent statue type later. But first, we need to look at the second framework. This is the one that most people fall for without even realizing it. I call it the butt trap, or the art of the P pseudo-apology. Have you ever heard someone say, I'm sorry you feel that way? It sounds like an apology if you're not paying attention, but if you look closely, it's actually a masterpiece of blame shifting. Let's look at a hyper-specific scenario. Imagine you're out at a birthday dinner for your friend, and another friend, let's call her Chloe, makes a really mean joke at your expense. It's one of those jokes that hits a deep insecurity, and the table goes quiet. Later, you pull Chloe aside and tell her that it really hurt your feelings. Chloe looks at you, sighs dramatically, and says, I'm sorry you're so sensitive today, I was just trying to keep the vibe fun. Do you feel that? That's the sting of the pseudo-apology. She used the word sorry, but she didn't apologize for her actions. She apologized for your reaction. She turned her mistake into your character flaw. Psychologically, this is a form of externalizing. People who do this cannot hold the weight of their own shame. Shame is a heavy, burning emotion. To them, it feels like swallowing hot coals. To stop the burning, they have to spit the coal onto someone else. If they can make you the problem, they don't have to feel the burn. Every time Chloe does this, a tiny bit of your trust in her dies. You stop sharing things with her. You start gray rocking her without even knowing the term. Eventually, Chloe will wake up and wonder why she has no deep friendships left. But when that happens, she won't blame herself. She'll say people are just so flaky these days. The cycle continues because her brain refuses to collect the data. If you're dealing with a Chloe, here is the exact script you need to use. When they say, "I'm sorry you feel that way," you don't get angry. You say, "I appreciate that you recognize I'm upset. However, I'm not talking about my feelings. I'm talking about your comment. Do you understand why that comment was hurtful?" This is like a laser beam. It cuts through the butt trap and forces the conversation back to the actual event. Most non-apologizers will panic here. They might storm off or change the subject. And that's okay, because your goal isn't to change them. It's to stop the gaslighting of your own reality. You are marking the boundary so you don't start believing their version of the story. But what if the person isn't just making excuses? What if they just go completely silent? This leads us to the third framework, which is the most chilling of all. I call it the moral eraser. Some people believe that if they don't acknowledge a mistake, it never actually happened. They think time is a universal solvent that dissolves all guilt. Think about a parent who says something horrific to their child during an argument. The next morning they come downstairs and say, "Hey, do you want pancakes? No apology? No, I went too far? Just pancakes." They act as if the previous night was a movie they never watched. This is a cognitive reforming tactic. By skipping the apology, they are trying to reset the relationship to zero. They think that by being nice now, it cancels out being cruel then. But emotions don't work like a bank account. You can't just deposit a pancake to cover a withdrawal of dignity. When someone refuses to acknowledge they hurt you, they are essentially saying your pain doesn't exist. It is the ultimate form of being unseen. If you live with a moral eraser, you will eventually start to feel invisible. You'll start to question your own memory. Did it really happen? Maybe I'm overreacting? Stop right there. That voice is the result of their psychological warfare, even if they aren't doing it on purpose. The strategy for the moral eraser is different. You cannot play the pancake game. When they try to reset the vibe with kindness, you have to be the one to hold the line. You say, "I'm glad you're in a better mood today, but we still need to talk about what happened last night before we move on." They will hate this. They will tell you that you're ruining the mood or living in the past, but you have to realize that they are the ones who ruin the mood. You are just refusing to pretend the floor isn't covered in glass. If you don't hold this line, you will spend your whole life walking on eggshells. And here's the terrifying picture of what happens if you don't fix this. Fast forward 5 years, you are still in this loop. You have stopped bringing up your feelings because it's too much work. You have become a shell of yourself, constantly editing your thoughts to avoid a conflict that will never be resolved. You look in the mirror and you don't recognize the person looking back. You've traded your self-respect for a fake fragile peace. Is that the life you want? Because that is the price of staying in a relationship with someone who refuses to be accountable. There is a voice in your head right now saying, "But they had a hard childhood. They didn't learn how to apologize. Or maybe they do so many other good things. I should just let this one thing go." That voice is lying to you. Understanding why someone is broken doesn't give them a license to break you. You can have compassion for their trauma while still demanding a basic level of human respect. If you're finding this helpful, it's probably because you've been gaslit for a long time. Hit that subscribe button and join the community. We're all trying to figure out how to reclaim our reality here. And honestly, leaving a comment about your experience might be the first time you've actually said your truth out loud. But I promised you a final secret at the beginning. There is one mistake that ruins everything, even if you follow all these frameworks. It's the mistake of waiting for the click. We all have this fantasy. We think that if we find the perfect combination of words, the other person will finally get it. We think their eyes will well up with tears, and they'll say, "Oh my God, I've been so blind. I'm so sorry for everything. I need you to hear this clearly." For the chronic non-apologizer, that moment is never coming. Their brain is physically unable to process that click because it would be too traumatic for their ego. They are like someone who is colorblind being told to describe the color red. They can see the shape of the object, but they can't see the red of their own fault. If you keep waiting for the click, you are giving them the keys to your happiness. You are putting your healing on hold until they decide to hand it to you. The final missing piece is self-validation. You have to be the one to say, "That was wrong, I was hurt, and I don't need them to agree for it to be true." When you stop needing their apology, you take your power. It's the most liberating feeling in the world. It's like finally putting down a 100-pound backpack you've been carrying for a decade. You realize you don't need their sorry to move forward. You just need your own permission to walk away from the table. This isn't about being cold or cutting people off for no reason. It's about recognizing when a door is actually a wall. You can't walk through a wall no matter how much you want to. You have to find the actual exit. The psychology of the non apologizer is a tragedy. But it doesn't have to be your tragedy. They are trapped in a prison of their own making. You don't have to sit in a cell with them just to keep them company. Real strength isn't about never making a mistake. It's about having the courage to look at your own mess and say, I did that. Let me help clean it up. If they can't do that, they aren't strong. They are just scared. And you shouldn't let a scared person dictate the terms of your life. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. Thanks for watching.